It is a pleasure to have you with us at the English Story Journal. Grab a coffee, find a quiet spot, and let's get lost in the story. That afternoon, the world felt perfect for Colin. The spring seemed to put all its beauty into the garden just for him. Dickon often stopped working. He looked around with wonder in his eyes and shook his head softly. It is gradely," he said. "I'm 12 going on 13, and there's a lot of afternoons in 13 years, but seems to me like I never seed one as gradely as this here." "Aye, it is a gradely one," said Mary, and she sighed for joy. "I'll warrant it's the gradeless one as ever was in this world." "Does the think," said Colin with dreamy carefulness, "as happen it was made like this here all a purpose for me?" "My word," cried Mary admiringly, "that there's a bit of good Yorkshire. That's shaping first rate, that thou art." Joy filled the air. They moved Colin's chair under a plum tree. It was white with flowers and full of bees. Other trees with pink and white blossoms were nearby. Blue sky showed between the tree branches. Mary and Dickon worked a little. Colin watched them. They brought him things to see: opening buds, green leaves, a woodpecker's feather, an empty bird's eggshell. Dickon pushed the chair around the garden. He stopped often so Colin could see new things growing from the earth or hanging from trees. It felt like a magic trip, seeing all the garden's treasures. "I wonder if we shall see the robin," said Colin. "Thou'll see him often enough after a bit," answered Dickon. "When the eggs hatches out the little chap, he'll be kept so busy it'll make his head swim. Thou'll see him flying backward and forward, carrying worms nigh as big as himself, and that much noise going on in the nest when he gets there as fair flusters him, so as he scarce knows which big mouth to drop the first piece in, and gaping beaks and squawks on every side. Mother says as when she sees the work a robin has to keep them gaping beaks filled, she feels like she was a lady with nothing to do. She says she's seen the little chaps when it seemed like the sweat must be dropping off 'em, though folk can't see it." This made them giggle so much that they covered their mouths. They remembered they must not be heard. Colin had learned about whispering in low voices days before. He liked the secret feeling of it, but when he was excited, it was hard not to laugh loudly. Every moment was full of new things. The sun grew more golden. The wheeled chair was back under the tree. Dickon sat on the grass and took out his pipe. Then Colin saw something he had not noticed before. "That's a very old tree over there, isn't it?" he said. Dickon and Mary looked at the tree. They were quiet for a moment. "Yes," answered Dickon, and his low voice sounded gentle. Mary gazed at the tree and thought. "The branches are quite gray and there's not a single leaf anywhere. It's quite dead, isn't it?" "Aye," admitted Dickon, "but them roses as has climbed all over it'll near hide every bit of the dead wood when they're full of leaves and flowers. It won't look dead then. It'll be the prettiest of all." Mary still gazed at the tree and thought. "It looks as if a big branch had been broken off. I wonder how it was done." "It's been done many a year." Dickon said, suddenly putting his hand on Colin. "Look at that robin. There he is. He's been foraging for his mate." Colin almost missed it. He saw the red-breasted bird fly quickly with something in its beak. It went into a green corner and was out of sight. Colin leaned back on his cushion, laughing a little. "He's taking her tea to her. Perhaps it's 5 o'clock. I think I'd like some tea myself." And so they were safe. "It was magic which sent the robin," said Mary secretly to Dickon afterward. "I know it was magic." Mary and Dickon were afraid Colin would ask about the broken tree branch. They had talked about it. Dickon had rubbed his head, worried. "We mun look as if it wasn't no different from the other trees," he had said. "We couldn't never tell him how it broke, poor lad. If he says anything about it, we mun try to look cheerful." "Aye, that we mun," had answered Mary. But Mary did not feel cheerful. She wondered about what Dickon had said. He kept rubbing his red hair, but a comforted look came to his blue eyes. Mrs. Craven was a very lovely young lady, he had gone on rather hesitatingly, and Mother, she thinks maybe she's about Misselthwaite many a time, looking after Mr. Colin, same as all mothers do when they're took out of the world. They have to come back, the seas. Happen she's been in the garden, and happen it was her set us to work and told us to bring him here. Mary thought he meant magic. She believed in magic. She thought Dickon used good magic on everything near him. That's why people liked him so much and wild animals knew he was their friend. She wondered if his magic brought the robin at the right time when Colin asked that dangerous question. She felt his magic working all afternoon. It made Colin look like a different boy. He did not seem like the angry boy who screamed and hit his pillow. His pale skin changed. A soft color stayed on his face, neck, and hands. He looked more alive, not like a doll. They saw the robin carry food to his mate 2 or 3 times. It made Colin think of afternoon tea. He felt they must have some. "Go and make one of the men servants bring some in a basket to the rhododendron walk," he said, "and then you and Dickon can bring it here." It was a good idea. Soon a white cloth was on the grass with hot tea, buttered toast, and crumpets. They ate a wonderful, hungry meal. Birds came to look for crumbs. Nut and Shell took cake to the trees. Soot took half a crumpet, looked at it, and then ate it all joyfully. The afternoon was ending. The sun's light was softer. Bees went home, and fewer birds flew by. Dickon and Mary sat on the grass. The tea basket was packed. Colin lay on his cushions. His hair was back from his forehead, and his face had a healthy color. "I don't want this afternoon to go," he said, "but I shall come back tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that." "You'll get plenty of fresh air, won't you?" said Mary. "I'm going to get nothing else," he answered. "I've seen the spring now, and I'm going to see the summer. I'm going to see everything grow here. I'm going to grow here myself." "That thou will," said Dickon. "Us'll have thee walking about here and digging, same as other folk afore long." Colin's face turned very red. "Walk," he said. "Dig? Shall I?" Dickon looked at him carefully. He and Mary had never asked if anything was wrong with Colin's legs. "For sure thou will," he said stoutly. Thou'st got legs of thine own, same as other folks." Mary was a little scared until Colin spoke. "Nothing really ails them," he said, "but they are so thin and weak. They shake so that I'm afraid to try to stand on them." Mary and Dickon felt relieved. "When the stops being afraid, they'll stand on 'em," Dickon said with new cheer. "And they'll stop being afraid in a bit." "I shall?" said Colin, and he lay still as if he were thinking. They were quiet for a while. The sun was going down. It was a peaceful time after a busy afternoon. Colin looked very relaxed. Even the animals were still, resting near them. In the middle of this quiet, Colin half lifted his head. He said in a loud, scared whisper, "Who is that man?" Dickon and Mary quickly stood up. "Man?" they both cried in low, quick voices. Colin pointed to the high wall. "Look," he whispered excitedly. "Just look." Mary and Dickon turned. Ben Weatherstaff was looking angrily at them over the wall. He was on top of a ladder. He shook his fist at Mary. "If I wasn't a bachelder and thou was a wench of mine," he cried, "I'd give thee a hidin'." He went up another step as if he would jump down to deal with her, but Mary walked to him, then stayed on the ladder, shaking his fist down at her. "I never thought much of thee," he shouted down at her. I couldna abide thee the first time I set eyes on thee, a scrawny, buttermilk-faced young besom, allus asking questions and poking the nose where it wasn't wanted. I never knowed how they got so thick with me. If it hadn't a been for the robin, drat him. Ben Weatherstaff, Mary called out, finding her breath. She stood below him and called up with a gasp. Ben Weatherstaff, it was the robin who showed me the way. Ben looked very angry. It seemed he would climb down the wall to her. Thy young bad un, he called down at her, laying thy badness on a robin. Not but what he's impotent enough for anything. Him showing thee the way. Him. Thy young knout. She could see his next words came because he was so curious. However in this world did thy get in? It was the robin who showed me the way, she protested stubbornly. He didn't know he was doing it, but he did. And I can't tell you from here while you're shaking your fist at me. He stopped shaking his fist very suddenly. His mouth dropped open. He was looking over her head at something coming across the grass. When Ben started talking, Colin was surprised. He sat up and listened. Then he called Dickon with a strong gesture. Wheel me over there. He's my man. He liked to say that. He liked to call him his man. Wheel me quite close and stop right in front of him. And this is what Ben Weatherstaff saw, which made his mouth drop open. A wheeled chair with soft cushions came towards him. Colin sat back, looking like a king, with a strong look in his eyes and a thin white hand pointed proudly at Ben. The chair stopped right in front of Ben Weatherstaff's face. No wonder his mouth was open. Do you know who I am? Demanded the king-like boy. Ben Weatherstaff stared, his old eyes fixed on Colin as if he saw a ghost. He looked and looked, then swallowed, but said nothing. Do you know who I am? Demanded Colin still more strongly. Answer! Ben Weatherstaff put his rough hand over his eyes and forehead. Then he answered in a strange, shaky voice. Who thou art? Aye, that I do, with a mother's eyes staring at me out of thy face. Lord knows how thou come here, but thou'rt the poor cripple. Colin forgot about his back. His face turned red, and he sat up very straight. I'm not a cripple, he cried out furiously. I'm not. He's not, cried Mary, almost shouting up the wall in her fierce anger. He's not got a lump as big as a pin. I looked, and there was none there, not one. Then Weatherstaff put his hand on his forehead again. He stared as if he could not stop looking. His hand, mouth, and voice all shook. He was an old man who only remembered what he had heard. Thou hasn't got a crooked back, he said in a rough voice. No, shouted Colin. Thou hasn't got crooked legs? Ben asked, his voice shaking more. This was too much. Colin usually put his strength into tantrums. Now a new strength filled him. No one had ever said his legs were crooked. Ben's words, showing he truly believed it, made Colin very angry. His pride made him forget everything else. He felt a power he had never known, a strange strength. Come here, he shouted to Dickon, and he began to pull the blankets off his legs. Come here, this minute. Dickon was by his side in a second. Mary gasped. She felt herself turn pale. He can do it, he can do it, he can do it, he can, she whispered to herself as fast as she could. Quickly the blankets fell to the ground. Dickon held Colin's arm. Colin's thin legs were out, his thin feet on the grass. Colin was standing. He stood straight like an arrow. He looked strangely tall. His head was back, and his strange eyes flashed. "Look at me," he called up at Ben Weatherstaff. "Just look at me, you. Just look at me." "He's as straight as I am," cried Dickon. "He's as straight as any lad o' Yorkshire." Mary thought what Ben did was very strange. He choked and swallowed. Suddenly, tears ran down his old wrinkled face. He hit his hands together. The lies folk tells. Thou'rt as thin as a lath and as white as a wraith, but there's not a knob on thee. Thou'lt make a mon yet. God bless thee." Dickon held Colin's arm strongly. Colin did not fall. He stood straighter and looked Ben Weatherstaff in the face. "I'm your master when my father is away, and you are to obey me. This is my garden. Don't dare to say a word about it. You get down from that ladder and go out to the long walk, and Miss Mary will meet you and bring you here. I want to talk to you. We did not want you, but now you will have to be in the secret. Be quick." Ben Weatherstaff's old face was still wet with tears. He could not stop looking at thin, straight Colin standing on his feet, head back. Lad," he almost whispered. My lad." Then he remembered himself. He touched his hat like a gardener and said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." He went down the ladder and disappeared. When Colin's head was out of sight, he turned to Mary. "Go and meet him," he said. Mary ran to the door. Dickon watched Colin, but he showed no signs of falling. "I can stand," he said. His head was still up, and he said it like a grand lord. "I told thee that could as soon as thou stopped being afraid," answered Dickon, "and thou stopped." "Yes, I've stopped," said Colin. Then he remembered something Mary had said. "Are you making magic?" he asked sharply. Dickon smiled. "Thou's doin' magic thyself," he said. "It's same magic as made these here work out of the earth," and he touched crocuses in the grass. Colin looked at them. "Aye," he said slowly, "there couldna be bigger magic than that there. There couldna be." He stood up straighter. "I'm going to walk to that tree," he said, pointing to one a few feet away. "I'm going to be standing when Weatherstaff comes here. I can rest against the tree if I like. When I want to sit down, I will sit down, but not before. Bring a rug from the chair." He walked to the tree. Dickon held his arm, but Colin was steady. He stood against the tree. When Ben Weatherstaff came through the door, he saw Colin standing there. He heard Mary saying something quietly. "What art saying?" he asked. He did not want to look away from Colin, but she did not tell him. "You can do it. You can do it. I told you you could. You can do it. You can do it. You can." She said it to Colin, wanting him to keep standing. He did not give in. He looked at Ben Weatherstaff in his bossy way. "Look at me," he commanded. "Look at me all over. Am I a hunchback? Have I got crooked legs?" Ben answered almost in his usual way. "Not that," he said. "Nowt o' the sort. What's thou been doin' with thyself, hiding out o' sight and letting folk think thou was crippled and half-witted?" "Half-witted?" said Colin angrily. "Who thought that?" "Lots o' fools," said Ben. "The world's full o' jackasses braying, and they never bray naught but lies. What did thou shut thyself up for?" "Everyone thought I was going to die," Colin said quickly. "I'm not." He said it strongly. Ben Weatherstaff looked him over. "Thou die," he said, happy and proud. "Nowt o' the sort. Thou's got too much pluck in thee. When I seed thee put thy legs on the ground in such a hurry, I knowed that was all right. Sit thee down on the rug a bit, young mester, and give me thy orders." Mary had spoken to him quickly. Colin was getting well because of the garden. No one must let him remember about being sick. Colin sat down on a rug under the tree. "What work do you do in the gardens, Weatherstaff?" asked Colin. "Anything I'm told to do," answered old Ben. "I'm kep' on by favor because she liked me." "She?" said Colin. "Thy mother," answered Ben Weatherstaff. "My mother?" Colin said. He looked around quietly. This was her garden, wasn't it? Aye, it was that. Ben Weatherstaff looked around. She was very fond of it. "It is my garden now. I am fond of it. I shall come here every day, but it is to be a secret. My orders are that no one is to know that we come here. Dickon and my cousin have worked and made it come alive. I shall send for you sometimes to help, but you must come when no one can see you." Ben Weatherstaff smiled. "I've come here before when no one saw me," he said. "What?" exclaimed Colin. "When?" "The last time I was here was about 2 years ago." "But no one has been in it for 10 years," cried Colin. "There was no door." "I'm no one," said old Ben dryly, "and I didn't come through the door. I come over the wall. The rheumatics held me back the last 2 year." "Thou come and did a bit of pruning," cried Dickon. "I couldn't make out how it had been done." "She was so fond of it, she was," said Ben Weatherstaff slowly. "And she was such a pretty young thing. She says to me once, 'Ben,' says she laughing, 'if ever I'm ill or if I go away, you must take care of my roses.' When she did go away, the orders was no one was ever to come nigh, but I come. Over the wall I come, until the rheumatics stopped me, and I did a bit of work once a year." "It wouldn't have been as wick as it is if thou hadn't done it," said Dickon. "I did wonder." "I'm glad you did it, Weatherstaff," said Colin. "You'll know how to keep the secret." "Ah, I'll know, sir," answered Ben, "and it'll be easier for a man with rheumatics to come in at the door." Mary had dropped her trowel. Colin picked it up. His thin hand was weak, but he pushed the trowel into the soil and turned earth over. "You can do it, you can do it," said Mary to herself. "I tell you, you can." Dickon watched, then Weatherstaff looked on with interest. Colin kept trying. After he had turned a few trowelfuls of soil, he spoke happily to Dickon in his best Yorkshire. "Thou said as thou'd have me walking about here same as other folk, and thou said thou'd have me digging. I thought thou was just leeing to please me. This is only the first day, and I've walked, and here I am digging." Then Weatherstaff was surprised when he heard him, but he chuckled. "Eh," he said, "that sounds as if thou'd got wits enow. Thou'rt a Yorkshire lad for sure, and thou'rt digging too. How'd thou like to plant a bit of something? I can get thee a rose in a pot." "Go and get it," said Colin, digging excitedly. "Quick, quick." It was done quickly. Ben Weatherstaff went, forgetting his pain. Dickon took his spade and dug the hole deeper and wider. Mary ran to bring back a watering can. When Dickon had deepened the hole, Colin went on turning the soft earth over. He looked up at the sky. His face was red from the new work. "I want to do it before the sun goes quite down," he said. Then Weatherstaff brought the rose in its pot. He walked as fast as he could. He was excited. He knelt by the hole and took the plant out of the pot. "Here, lad," he said, handing the plant to Colin. "Set it in the earth thyself, same as the king does when he goes to a new place." Colin's thin hands shook. His face got redder as he put the rose in the earth and held it while Ben made the earth firm. The hole was filled and made steady. Mary was leaning forward on her hands and knees. "It's planted," said Colin at last, "and the sun is only slipping over the edge. Help me up, Dickon. I want to be standing when it goes. That's part of the magic." Dickon helped him. The magic gave him strength. When the sun slipped over the edge, he stood on his 2 feet laughing. Dr. Craven waited when they returned. He looked at Colin seriously in his room. "You should not have stayed so long," he said. "You must not overexert yourself." "I am not tired at all," said Colin. "It has made me well. Tomorrow I am going out in the morning as well as in the afternoon." "I am not sure that I can allow it," answered Dr. Craven. "I am afraid it would not be wise." "It would not be wise to try to stop me," said Colin quite seriously. "I am going." Mary knew Colin was rude, but he did not know it. He had always been like a king, so he made his own rules. Mary had also been rude, but she was learning better manners, so she looked at Colin after Dr. Craven left, wanting him to ask her why. "What are you looking at me for?" he said. "I'm thinking that I am rather sorry for Dr. Craven." "So am I," Colin said calmly, but with some satisfaction. "He won't get Misselthwaite at all now I'm not going to die." "I'm sorry for him because of that, of course, but I was thinking just then that it must have been very horrid to have had to be polite for 10 years to a boy who was always rude. I would never have done it." "Am I rude?" Colin inquired undisturbedly. "If you had been his own boy and he had been a slapping sort of man," said Mary, "he would have slapped you." "But he daren't," said Colin. "No, he daren't," answered Mistress Mary, thinking. "Nobody ever dared to do anything you didn't like, because you were going to die and things like that. You were such a poor thing." "But," announced Colin stubbornly, "I am not going to be a poor thing. I won't let people think I'm one. I stood on my feet this afternoon." "It is always having your own way that has made you so queer," Mary went on, thinking aloud. Colin frowned. "Am I queer?" he demanded. "Yes," answered Mary, "very. But you needn't be cross," she added, "because so am I queer, and so is Ben Weatherstaff. But I am not as queer as I was before I began to like people and before I found the garden." "I don't want to be queer," said Colin. "I am not going to be," and he frowned again with determination. He was a proud boy. He thought, then Mary saw his beautiful smile change his whole face. "I shall stop being queer," he said, "if I go every day to the garden. There is magic in there, good magic, you know, Mary. I am sure there is." "So am I," said Mary. "Even if it isn't real magic," Colin said, "we can pretend it is. Something is there. Something." "It's magic," said Mary, "but not black. It's as white as snow." They always called it magic, and it truly felt like magic in the months that followed. Many amazing things happened in that garden. Green plants pushed through the earth everywhere, buds opened and showed many colors. The garden was full of flowers. Ben Weatherstaff had made places in the walls for climbing plants. Beautiful flowers grew from the grass, and blue and white flowers filled the green corners. "She was main fond of them, she was," Ben Weatherstaff said. "She liked them things as was allus pointin' up to the blue sky," she used to tell. "Not as she was one of them as looked down on the earth, not her. She just loved it, but she said as the blue sky allus looked so joyful." The seeds Dickon and Mary planted grew fast. Many colorful poppies danced in the wind, and the roses, all the roses, they grew everywhere, from the grass, around the sundial, and up the walls. They filled the garden with beautiful, sweet-smelling flowers. Colin watched every change in the garden. Every morning he came out, spending hours there. Even gray days pleased him. He would lie on the grass, watching things growing, he said. He watched insects and a mole digging. The ways of ants, bees, birds, and plants gave him a new world. Dickon added the ways of foxes, otters, and squirrels, so there was always something new to talk about. This was not all the magic. Colin thought a lot about standing on his feet. When Mary told him about her spell, he was excited and talked about it all the time. "Of course, there must be lots of magic in the world," he said wisely one day, "but people don't know what it is like or how to make it. Perhaps the beginning is just to say nice things are going to happen until you make them happen. I am going to try an experiment." The next morning, in the secret garden, Colin sent for Ben Weatherstaff. Ben came fast and found Colin standing under a tree, looking grand and smiling beautifully. "Good morning, Ben Weatherstaff," he said. "I want you and Dickon and Miss Mary to stand in a row and listen to me because I am going to tell you something very important." "Aye, aye, sir," answered Ben Weatherstaff, touching his forehead. "I am going to try a scientific experiment," explained Colin. "When I grow up, I am going to make great scientific discoveries, and I am going to begin now with this experiment." "Aye, aye, sir," said Ben Weatherstaff promptly, though this was the first time he had heard of great scientific discoveries. Mary had not heard of them either, but she knew Colin, though strange, had read much and was convincing. Now he felt like a grown-up giving a speech, so he was very convincing. "The great scientific discoveries I am going to make," he went on, "will be about magic. Magic is a great thing, and scarcely anyone knows anything about it, except a few people in old books, and Mary a little, because she was born in India, where there are fakers. I believe Dickon knows some magic, but perhaps he doesn't know he knows it. He charms animals and people. I would never have let him come to see me if he had not been an animal charmer, which is a boy charmer too, because a boy is an animal. I am sure there is magic in everything, only we have not sense enough to get hold of it and make it do things for us, like electricity and horses and steam." This sounded important, and Ben Weatherstaff became excited. "Aye, aye, sir," he said, and he began to stand up quite straight. "When Mary found this garden, it looked quite dead," Colin proceeded. "Then something began pushing things up out of the soil and making things out of nothing. One day, things weren't there, and another, they were. I had never watched things before, and it made me feel very curious. Scientific people are always curious, and I'm going to be scientific. I keep saying to myself, what is it? What is it? It's something. It can't be nothing. I don't know its name, so I call it magic. I have never seen the sun rise, but Mary and Dickon have, and from what they tell me, I'm sure that is magic too. Something pushes it up and draws it. Sometimes since I've been in the garden, I've looked up through the trees at the sky, and I have had a strange feeling of being happy, as if something were pushing and drawing in my chest and making me breathe fast. Magic is always pushing and drawing and making things out of nothing. Everything is made out of magic. Leaves and trees, flowers and birds, badgers and foxes and squirrels, and people. So it must be all around us. In this garden, in all the places. The magic in this garden has made me stand up and know I'm going to live to be a man. I'm going to make the scientific experiment of trying to get some and put it in myself and make it push and draw me and make me strong. I don't know how to do it, but I think that if you keep thinking about it and calling it, perhaps it will come. Perhaps that is the first baby way to get it. When I was going to try to stand that first time, Mary kept saying to herself as fast as she could, "You can do it, you can do it." And I did. I had to try myself at the same time, of course, but her magic helped me, and so did Dickon's. Every morning and evening, and as often in the daytime as I can remember, I'm going to say, "Magic is in me. Magic is making me well. I'm going to be as strong as Dickon, as strong as Dickon." And you must all do it too. That is my experiment. Will you help, Ben Weatherstaff? "Aye, aye, sir," said Ben Weatherstaff. Aye. If you keep doing it every day as regularly as soldiers go through drill, we shall see what will happen and find out if the experiment succeeds. You learn things by saying them over and over and thinking about them until they stay in your mind forever, and I think it will be the same with magic. If you keep calling it to come to you and help you, it will get to be part of you, and it will stay and do things. I once heard an officer in India tell my mother that there were fakirs who said words over and over thousands of times, said Mary. I've heard Jim Fettleworth's wife say the same thing over thousands of times, calling Jim a drunken brute, said Ben Weatherstaff dryly. Some at all has come of that, sure enough. He gave her a good hidin' and went to the Blue Line and got as drunk as a lord. Colin thought a few minutes, then he cheered up. Well, he said, you see, something did come of it. She used the wrong magic until she made him beat her. If she'd used the right magic and had said something nice, perhaps he wouldn't have got as drunk as a lord, and perhaps he might have bought her a new bonnet. Ben Weatherstaff laughed. There was a clever look in his old eyes. Thou'rt a clever lad as well as a straight-legged one, Mr. Colin, he said. Next time I see Bess Fettleworth, I'll give her a bit of a hint of what magic'll do for her. She'd be rare and pleased if the scientific experiment worked, and so would Jim. Dickon listened to Colin. His round eyes shone with joy. Nut and Shell were on his shoulders. He held a white rabbit and stroked it softly. The rabbit enjoyed it. Do you think the experiment will work? Colin asked him, wondering what he was thinking. Dickon smiled, his smile wider than usual. Aye, he answered, that I do. It'll work same as the seeds do when the sun shines on 'em. It'll work for sure. Shall us begin it now? Colin was delighted, and so was Mary. Colin suggested they should all sit cross-legged under the tree which made a canopy. It will be like sitting in a sort of temple, said Colin. I'm rather tired and I want to sit down. Eh, said Dickon, thou mustn't begin by saying thou'rt tired. Thou might spoil the magic. Colin looked at Dickon's innocent eyes. That's true, he said slowly. I must only think of the magic. It felt grand and secret as they sat in their circle. Ben Weatherstaff felt like he was at a prayer meeting. He usually did not like them, but this was Colin's idea, so he did not mind. Mary felt very happy. Dickon held his rabbit. Perhaps he made a special sign because the crow, the fox, the squirrels, and the lamb slowly came closer. They joined the circle and lay down to rest as if they wanted to. The creatures have come, said Colin gravely. They want to help us. Colin looked beautiful, Mary thought. He held his head high like a priest, his strange eyes looking wonderful. Light shone on him through the tree. Now we will begin, he said. Shall we sway backward and forward, Mary, as if we were dervishes? I canna do no swaying backward and forward, said Ben Weatherstaff. I've got the rheumatics. The magic will take them away, said Colin in a high priest tone, but we won't sway until it has done it. We will only chant. I canna do no chantin', said Ben Weatherstaff a trifle testily. They turned me out of the church choir the only time I ever tried it. No one smiled. They were all very serious. Colin's face was calm. He thought only of the magic. Then I will chant, he said, and he began, looking like a strange boy spirit. The sun is shining, the sun is shining, that is the magic. The flowers are growing, the roots are stirring, that is the magic. Being alive is the magic, being strong is the magic. The magic is in me, the magic is in me, it's in me, It's in me. It's in every one of us. It's in Ben Weatherstaff's back. Magic, magic, come and help. He said it many times. Mary listened, feeling a strange beauty. Ben Weatherstaff felt peaceful and slowly fell asleep, with bees humming and Colin's voice. Dickens sat with his rabbit asleep, and Soot, the crow, sat on his shoulder. At last, Colin stopped. "Now I'm going to walk round the garden," he announced. Ben Weatherstaff's head dropped forward, then he lifted it with a jerk. "You have been asleep," said Colin. "Not o' the sort," mumbled Ben. "The sermon was good enow, but I'm bound to get out afore the collection." He was not quite awake yet. "You're not in church," said Colin. "Not me," said Ben, straightening himself. "Who said I were? I heard every bit of it. You said the magic was in my back. The doctor calls it rheumatics." Colin waved his hand. "That was the wrong magic. You will get better. You have my permission to go to your work, but come back tomorrow." "I'd like to see thee walk round the garden," grunted Ben. It was not an angry sound, but a grunt. Ben was stubborn and did not fully believe in magic. He decided if sent away, he would watch from the wall, ready to help if Colin stumbled. Colin did not mind Ben staying, so the procession began. It looked like a real procession. Colin led, with Dickon and Mary beside him. Ben Weatherstaff walked behind, followed by the animals, the lamb, fox cub, white rabbit, and Soot the crow. They walked slowly and proudly, stopping to rest every few steps. Colin leaned on Dickon's arm, but sometimes walked alone. He held his head high and looked very grand. "The magic is in me," he kept saying. "The magic is making me strong. I can feel it. I can feel it." It felt like something was making him strong. He sat on garden seats or the grass and rested on Dickon's arm, but he did not give up until he had walked all around the garden. When he came back, his face was red and he looked very happy. "I did it! The magic worked!" he cried. "That is my first scientific discovery." "What will Dr. Craven say?" broke out Mary. "He won't say anything," Colin answered, "because he will not be told. This is to be the biggest secret of all. No one is to know anything about it until I have grown so strong that I can walk and run like any other boy. I shall come here every day in my chair, and I shall be taken back in it. I won't have people whispering and asking questions, and I won't let my father hear about it until the experiment has quite succeeded. Then, sometime when he comes back to Misselthwaite, I shall just walk into his study and say, 'Here I am like any other boy. I am quite well, and I shall live to be a man. It has been done by a scientific experiment.'" "He will think he is in a dream," cried Mary. "He won't believe his eyes." Colin's face looked very happy. He believed he would get well, which was a big step. He was most excited imagining his father seeing him strong. In the past, he hated being a weak boy his father was afraid to look at. "He'll be obliged to believe them," he said. "One of the things I am going to do, after the magic works and before I begin to make scientific discoveries, is to be an athlete." "We shall have thee taken to boxing in a week or so," said Ben Weatherstaff. "Thou'lt end with winning the belt and being champion prize fighter of all England." Colin fixed his eyes on him sternly. "Weatherstaff, that is disrespectful. You must not take liberties because you are in the secret. However much the magic works, I shall not be a prize fighter. I shall be a scientific discoverer." Ax pardon, sir," answered Ben, touching his forehead in salute. "I ought have seed it wasn't a joking matter." But his eyes twinkled. Secretly, he was very happy. It meant Colin was getting stronger and braver. Dickon worked in another garden near his cottage on the moor. He grew vegetables for his mother, often with his animals, whistling or singing. His garden always grew well. "We'd never get on as comfortable as we do," Mrs. Sowerby said, "if it wasn't for Dickon's garden. Anything'll grow for him. His taters and cabbages is twice the size of anyone else's, and they've got a flavor with 'em as nobody's has." Mrs. Sowerby often joined him after supper, listening to the stories. She loved this time. Dickon also grew flowers among the vegetables, making the garden very pretty. "All a chap's got to do to make 'em thrive, Mother," he would say, "is to be friends with 'em for sure. They're just like the creatures. If they're thirsty, give 'em a drink, and if they're hungry, give 'em a bit of food. They want to live same as we do. If they died, I should feel as if I'd been a bad lad and somehow treated 'em heartless." In these evening hours, Mrs. Sowerby learned about Misselthwaite Manor. At first, she only heard Colin was going outside with Mary and getting better. Soon the children trusted her with their secret. One evening, Dickon told her the whole story: the buried key, the robin, the garden, and Mary's secret plan. He spoke of Colin's doubts, his first visit, Ben Weatherstaff's angry face, and Colin's sudden strength. Mrs. Sowerby's face changed color as she listened. "My word," she said, "it was a good thing that little lass came to the manor. It's been the making of her and the saving of him. Standing on his feet, and us all thinking he was a poor half-witted lad with not a straight bone in him." She asked many questions. Her blue eyes were full of deep thought. "What do they make of it at the manor, him being so well and cheerful and never complaining?" she inquired. "They don't know what to make of it. Every day as comes round his face looks different. It's filling out and doesn't look so sharp, and the waxy color is going, but he has to do his bit of complaining," with a big smile. "What for, in mercy's name?" asked Mrs. Sowerby. Dickon chuckled. "He does it to keep 'em from guessing what's happened. If the doctor knew he found out he could stand on his feet, he'd likely write and tell Mester Craven. Mester Colin's saving the secret to tell himself. He's going to practice his magic on his legs every day until his father comes back, and then he's going to march into his room and show him he's as straight as other lads. But him and Miss Mary thinks it's best plan to do a bit of groaning and fretting now and then to throw folk off the scent." Mrs. Sowerby laughed a soft, happy laugh before he finished. "Eh, that pair's enjoying theirselves, I'll warrant. They'll get a good bit of play acting out of it, and there's nothing children likes as much as play acting. Let's hear what they do, Dickon lad." Dickon stopped weeding and sat on his heels to tell her. His eyes were shining with fun. "Mester Colin is carried down to his chair every time he goes out," he explained, "and he flies out at John, the footman, for not carrying him careful enough. He makes himself as helpless looking as he can and never lifts his head until we're out of sight of the house, and he grunts and frets a good bit when he's being settled into his chair. Him and Miss Mary's both got to enjoying it, and when he groans and complains, she'll say, 'Poor Colin, does it hurt you so much? Are you so weak as that, poor Colin?' But the trouble is that sometimes they can scarce keep from bursting out laughing. When we get safe into the garden, they laugh till they've no breath left to laugh with, and they have to stuff their faces into Mester Colin's cushions to keep the gardeners from hearing if any of 'em's about." "The more they laugh, the better for 'em," said Mrs. Sowerby, still laughing herself. "Good, healthy child laughing's better than pills any day of the year. That pair'll plump up for sure." "They are plumping up," said Dickon. "They're that hungry they don't know how to get enough to eat without making talk. Mr. Colin says if he keeps sending for more food, they won't believe he's an invalid at all. Miss Mary says she'll let him eat her share, but he says that if she goes hungry, she'll get thin, and they mun both get fat at once." Mrs. Sowerby laughed so much at this problem that she rocked back and forth. Dickon laughed with her. "I'll tell thee what, lad," said Mrs. Sowerby when she could speak. "I've thought of a way to help 'em. When thou goes to 'em in the mornings, thou shalt take a pail of good new milk, and I'll bake 'em a crusty cottage loaf or some buns with currants in 'em, same as you children like. Nothing so good as fresh milk and bread. Then they could take off the edge of their hunger while they were in their garden, and the fine food they get indoors 'd polish off the corners." Mother," said Dickon admiringly, "what a wonder thou art. Thou always sees a way out of things. They was quite in a pother yesterday. They didn't see how they was to manage without ordering up more food. They felt that empty inside. They're two young'uns growing fast, and health's coming back to both of 'em. Children like that feels like young wolves, and food's flesh and blood to 'em," said Mrs. Sowerby. Then she smiled Dickon's own curved smile. But they're enjoying theirselves for sure." She was right. Colin and Mary enjoyed their play acting. The idea to hide their health came from the nurse and Dr. Craven. "Your appetite is improving very much, Master Colin," Nurse had said one day. "You used to eat nothing, and so many things disagreed with you." "Nothing disagrees with me now," replied Colin, and then seeing the nurse looking at him curiously, he suddenly remembered that perhaps he ought not to appear too well just yet. "At least, things don't so often disagree with me. It's the fresh air." "Perhaps it is," said the nurse, still looking at him with a puzzled look, "but I must talk to Dr. Craven about it." "How she stared at you when she went away," said Mary, as if she thought there must be something to find out. "I want her finding out things. No one must begin to find out yet." When Dr. Craven came that morning, he also seemed puzzled. He asked Colin many questions. "You stay out in the garden a great deal," he suggested. "Where do you go?" Colin acted as if he did not care what anyone thought. "I will not let anyone know where I go," he answered. "I go to a place I like. Everyone has orders to keep out of the way. I won't be watched and stared at. You know that." "You seem to be out all day, but I do not think it has done you harm." "I do not think so. The nurse says that you eat much more than you have ever done before." "Perhaps," said Colin with a sudden idea, "perhaps it is an unnatural appetite." "I do not think so, as your food seems to agree with you," said Dr. Craven. "You are gaining flesh rapidly, and your color is better." Perhaps I am bloated and feverish," said Colin, looking sad. "People who are not going to live are often different." Dr. Craven shook his head. He held Colin's wrist and felt his arm. "You are not feverish," he said thoughtfully, "and such flesh as you have gained is healthy. If we can keep this up, my boy, we need not talk of dying. Your father will be very happy to hear of this remarkable improvement." "I won't have him told," Colin broke forth fiercely. "It will only disappoint him if I get worse again, and I may get worse this very night. I might have a raging fever. I feel as if I might be beginning to have one now. I won't have letters written to my father. I won't. You are making me angry, and you know that is bad for me. I feel hot already. I hate being written about and being talked over as much as I hate being stared at." "Hush, my boy," Dr. Craven soothed him. Nothing shall be written without your permission. You are too sensitive about things. You must not undo the good which has been done." He said no more about writing to Mr. Craven. He warned the nurse not to mention it to Colin. "The boy is extraordinarily better. His advance seems almost abnormal. But of course he is doing now of his own free will what we could not make him do before. Still, he excites himself very easily, and nothing must be said to irritate him." Mary and Colin worried and discussed. From this time they continued their play-acting. "I may be obliged to have a tantrum," said Colin regretfully. "I don't want to have one, and I'm not miserable enough now to work myself into a big one. Perhaps I couldn't have one at all. That lump in my throat doesn't come now, and I keep thinking of nice things instead of horrible ones. But if they talk about writing to my father, I shall have to do something." He decided to eat less, but it was impossible. He woke up hungry every morning. His breakfast table had fresh bread, butter, eggs, jam, and cream. Mary always ate with him. At the table, especially with hot ham, they looked at each other desperate. "I think we shall have to eat it all this morning, Mary," Mary always ended by saying. "We can send away some of the lunch and a great deal of the dinner." But they never sent anything away. The empty plates in the kitchen caused much talk. "I do wish," Colin would say also, "I do wish the slices of ham were thicker, and one muffin each is not enough for anyone." "It's enough for a person who is going to die," answered Mary when first she heard this, "but it's not enough for a person who is going to live. I sometimes feel as if I could eat 3 when those nice fresh heather and gorse smells from the moor come pouring in at the open window." One morning, after 2 hours in the garden, Dickon brought 2 metal pails from behind a rose bush. One held fresh milk with cream. The other had hot, homemade currant buns wrapped in a cloth. Mary and Colin were overjoyed. They thought Mrs. Sowerby was kind and clever, and the food delicious. "Magic is in her just as it is in Dickon," said Colin. "It makes her think of ways to do things, nice things. She is a magic person. Tell her we are grateful, extremely grateful." He sometimes used grown-up words, enjoying them. "Tell her she has been most bounteous, and our gratitude is extreme." Then, forgetting his grand words, he ate many buns and drank milk from the pail like any hungry boy who had been exercising and was long past breakfast. This was the start of many good things. Realizing Mrs. Sowerby had many mouths to feed, they asked to send her money for their extra food. Dickon found a hollow in the woods outside the garden. There they built a stone oven to roast potatoes and eggs. Roasted eggs were a new treat, and hot potatoes with salt and butter were delicious and filling. They could eat without worrying about Mrs. Sowerby's large family. Every morning they did their magic under the plum tree. After, Colin took his walking exercise, practicing his new strength all day. Each day he grew stronger, walked more steadily, and went farther. His belief in magic grew. He tried new things as he gained strength, and Dickon showed him the best exercises. "Yesterday," he said one morning after an absence, "I went to Thwaite for Mother, and near the Blue Cow Inn I seed Bob Haworth. He's the strongest chap on the moor. He's the champion wrestler, and he can jump higher than any other chap and throw the hammer farther. He's gone all the way to Scotland for the sports some years. He's knowed me ever since I was a little un, and he's a friendly sort, and I asked him some questions. The gentry calls him an athlete, and I thought of thee, Mr. Colin, and I says, 'How did thou make thy muscles stick out that way, Bob? Did thou do anything extra to make thyself so strong?' And he says, 'Well, yes, lad, I did. A strong man in a show that came to Thwaite once showed me how to exercise my arms and legs and every muscle in my body. And I says, could a delicate chap make himself stronger with them, Bob? And he laughed and says, art thou the delicate chap? And I says, no, but I knows a young gentleman that's getting well of a long illness, and I wish I knowed some of them tricks to tell him about. I didn't say no names, and he didn't ask none. He's friendly, same as I said, and he stood up and showed me good-natured like, and I imitated what he did till I knowed it by heart. Colin had been listening excitedly. Can you show me? He cried. Will you? Aye, to be sure, Dickon answered, getting up. But he says thou mun do them gentle at first, and be careful not to tire thyself. Rest in between times, and take deep breaths, and don't overdo. I'll be careful. Show me, show me. Dickon, you are the most magic boy in the world. Dickon stood on the grass and slowly demonstrated simple muscle exercises. Colin watched intently. He tried a few sitting, then gently while standing on his steady feet. Mary joined in. Soot, the crow, watched, hopping restlessly, unable to join. From then on, exercises were part of their routine, like the magic. Colin and Mary did more each time. They grew so hungry that Dickon's morning food basket was essential. The oven in the hollow and Mrs. Sowerby's treats were satisfying. Mrs. Medlock, the nurse, and Dr. Craven became puzzled again. It was easy to pretend not to eat breakfast and dinner when they were full of roasted eggs, potatoes, fresh milk, oatcakes, buns, honey, and cream. They are eating next to nothing, said the nurse. They'll die of starvation if they can't be persuaded to take some nourishment. And yet see how they look. Look, exclaimed Mrs. Medlock indignantly. I'm moithered to death with them. They're a pair of young Satans, bursting their jackets one day and the next turning up their noses at the best meals cook can tempt them with. Not a mouthful of that lovely young fowl and bread sauce did they set a fork into yesterday, and the poor woman fair invented a pudding for them, and back it sent. She almost cried. She's afraid she'll be blamed if they starve themselves into their graves. Dr. Craven observed Colin closely. He looked worried when the nurse showed him the untouched breakfast. He looked more worried as he examined Colin, whom he hadn't seen for 2 weeks. Young people gain health rapidly. Colin's skin was no longer pale but rosy. His eyes clear, his cheeks and temples filled out, his dark hair looked healthy, his lips full and normal. He looked nothing like a sick boy. Dr. Craven thought about him. I am sorry to hear that you do not eat anything, he said. That will not do. You will lose all you have gained, and you have gained amazingly. You ate so well a short time ago. I told you it was an unnatural appetite, answered Colin. Mary, sitting nearby, made a strange sound, trying hard to stop it, almost choking. What is the matter? Said Dr. Craven, turning to look at her. Mary became very serious. It was something between a sneeze and a cough, she replied with reproachful dignity, and it got into my throat. But, she said afterward to Colin, I couldn't stop myself. It just burst out because all at once I couldn't help remembering that last big potato you ate and the way your mouth stretched when you bit through that thick, lovely crust with jam and clotted cream on it. Is there any way in which those children can get food secretly? Inquired Dr. Craven of Mrs. Medlock. There's no way unless they dig it out of the earth or pick it off the trees, Mrs. Medlock answered. They stay out in the grounds all day and see no one but each other, and if they want anything different to eat from what's sent up to them, they need only ask for it. Well, said Dr. Craven, so long as going without food agrees them, we need not disturb ourselves. The boy is a new creature. So is the girl, said Mrs. Medlock. She's begun to be downright pretty since she's filled out and lost her ugly little sour look. Her hair's grown thick and healthy looking, and she's got a bright color. The glummest, ill-natured little thing she used to be, and now her and Master Colin laugh together like a pair of crazy young ones. Perhaps they're growing fat on that." "Perhaps they are," said Dr. Craven. "Let them laugh." Thank you for spending time with us. I hope this story brought you peace and reflection. We will see you soon.